Welcome to Community Church Unitarian Universalist Worship Service, where we gather each week beyond our four walls so that we can be together in these unique times. I am Reverend Jacqueline Luck, CCUU member and worship associate this Sunday. Community Church UU is a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. All who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning are welcome within our congregation. Ours is a faith in action as we strive to do the work of justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically in recognition of the inherent worth and dignity of every being. We believe it is not necessary to think alike, to love alike. We are very glad you have joined us this morning for our service of worth giving. I have several announcements this morning, which you can also read in the Community Matters email that you received earlier in this week. Our beloved minister is out of the pulpit on a parental leave, and she'll return to the pulpit September the 13th. I've received a message from the board president that that apparently an email has gone out with our minister's name on it, asking for money. That, of course, is not real. Please do not send money and ignore it. We've been hacked. Or perhaps her email has been hacked, I'm not sure. The sermon this morning will be shared by congregation member Ed Malone. Alan will speak live from his home while sharing his account of growing up as the son of Ed Malone, a very good, if imperfect, father who got the job despite some difficult circumstances. Alan has attended Reverend Darcy's class, Nurturing Membership Sermon Writing Abilities, and he highly recommends the class, The Shared Pulpit, to others. You can speak to him for further details. Since taking the class Alan's written, he's written or rewritten this sermon concept, which he originally shared in 2006. I want to remind you that the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations General Assembly, which we call GA, is online from June the 24th to the 28th and includes the fabulous Where lecture for $150. CCUU's board has a few scholarships to encourage attendance at this important and inspiring event. Their email is board@ccuunola.org. Also, I want to tell you, though, that it is not necessary to register for Sunday worship, which is always so inspiring. The service of the living tradition, which acknowledges ministers in our UU ministers in transition and their ministries, and it has always has a couple of wonderful sermons. And also the Synergy Bridging Worship Service, which is for youth transitioning to young adults. All of those are free of charge, so you can just go to their online site. I Googled this morning GA 2020 and it popped right up to see the schedule and all of the special services. You really want to do that. The board of the Greater New Orleans UU has designed and purchased Black Lives Matter yard signs and donated some to each of the 3 NOLA churches. Anyone who'd like to request a sign on a first-come basis, contact Charlotte at office@ccuunola.org. There are, as I mentioned, other announcements. I can't include them all, but there's a fabulous sounding art exhibit of works by Black artists, and amazingly, an African-American history course from Yale. All wonderful opportunities that I know you'll want to look into. Our church member, Alicia Cook, has our introit this morning.
Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come.
Thank you. It is Community Church's custom to light a chalice, invoking sacred hope and truth to our worship service. I've lit our candle in advance and am trying not to set the world on fire. So would you please join me in reading the words in the chat box written by Bert Brunson, church member.
We light this flame to...
They're supposed to be there. There it is. Let's read them. We light this flame to affirm the light of truth and knowledge, the warmth of love and community, and the fire of hope and commitment. CCUU's religious director, Cynthia Ramirez, has words for all ages this morning.
Good morning, everybody. I want to wish all the fathers out there a happy Father's Day. And I wanted to wish my father, I'm going to show you a picture of my dad. And ladies, just a moment. This is my father. He left us in 2000. But this is the picture. We kissed every night when he was in Korea. So he used to take pictures of himself all the time when he was in the military, every month or something like that. And this is one of them that he did. Okay, so I'm going to read a story called Only Dad. And this is by Edgar Albert Guest. Only a dad with a tired face, coming home from the daily race, bringing little of gold or fame, to show how well he has played the game, but glad in his heart that his own rejoice to see him come and to hear his voice. Only a dad with a brood of 4, one of 10 million men or more, plodding along in the daily strife, bearing the whips and the scorns of life, with never a whimper of pain or hate, for the sake of those who at home await. Only a dad, neither rich nor proud, merely one of the surging crowd, toiling, surviving from day to day, facing whatever may come his way. Silent, and whenever the harsh condemn, and bearing it all for the love of them. Only a dad, but he gives his all to smooth the way for his children small, doing with courage stern and grim the deeds that his father did for him. This is the pen that for him this is the line that for him I pen. Only a dad, but the best of men. The end. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Within our congregation, we recognize the joys and sorrows within our worship normally. And in this virtual service, I invite you to write your public messages in the chat box during the hymn, and they will be read after the music. Alicia has a recording for us There is More Love Somewhere is a traditional African-American hymn arranged and performed by Jess Hootman on YouTube.
Thank you. And I would just like to preface this by saying I'm doing my best to choose some very simple hymns and a cappella hymns and just pulling the lyrics. So hopefully you all will be able to kind of pick them up and sing at home as well.
Wonderful.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
What a hope to hold on to. We light a candle virtually in celebrating the birth of Alan and Marilyn's great nephew. He was born Juneteenth in Houston. Welcome to the world, Henry Tipton. Amy writes, and you see that every time it says Darcy, it's actually Amy in attendance. Amy writes that she's happy to report that her husband Victor is feeling much better after being diagnosed with pneumonia last week. Thanks to all of you who heard he was sick and reached out. From Kathy Larimer, I am very concerned that police killing of people of color have continued in spite of the issues being so exposed. Howard Milkey, thinking about the joys and happiness of my granddaughter, Lena, she sent a picture. I'm sure all of us are remembering others that we hold in our hearts. I'm especially thinking of my sons. I'm sure you're thinking of others. And so we also virtually light a candle for them and for all those who do fatherhood so well, regardless of what relationship they are to the children. Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Your generosity enables the congregation to fulfill its mission within and without of its church walls. You can give online www.ccunola.org/stewardship, or by text. For virtual donations, please note that there's a 3% processing fee. You can make arrangements to transfer money for your donations. You can mail a check to CCUU at 6690 Florida Lee. New Orleans, of course, LA 70124. Every penny is appreciated, and the big bills as well. Thank you. Alicia, I think she's going to sing or play Take My Life and Let It Be, arranged by Greg Howlett. Marilyn Monroe. You've been called that before. Marilyn Malone will read our reading today, A Complicated Father's Day, by my colleague Lynn Cox.
Holidays are complicated, especially the ones named after roles. Human relationships are messy, including relationships with people who are honored by holidays. For a lot of people, Father's Day brings up feelings of grief for fathers who were lost, or who couldn't be there, or who chose not to be there. Father's Day may bring up feelings of sorrow or regret for people who wanted to be fathers and haven't been able to, or who haven't been able to be the fathers they wanted to be for their kids. Today might be a day of divided loyalties for people who have called more than one person father or dad in the course of their lives. Then there are the people of a variety of genders who are father figures, step-parents, and mentors for young people, but who don't get the recognition they deserve today or any day. On the other hand, Father's Day can be joyful and sweet, remembering the times when dads or granddads, uncles or role models were there for us. For people who have positive relationships with a living father figure, today may very well include happy phone calls, funny greeting cards, and tacky ties. For contented new fathers, today might be full of wonder and hope as they get used to their new title. And for a lot of people, there will be a mix. Even the best dads fall short sometimes. Some fathers who struggle still have their shining moments. Nothing is simple. So here's my prayer. May we be grateful for the nurturing we have received in our lives from sources both hidden and obvious. May we heal from the losses heightened by Father's Day. May we nurture each other and the generations to come. May the friendship and love we have in our lives today ease the pain and amplify the positive memories of our past. May this be a day of reconciliation and peace. And I will add, may this day be a day of appreciation and deep joy for all who wear the mantle of fatherhood and fatherliness. May it be so.
Hello, my name's Ed Malone. I'll be giving the sermon today. Let me start with something very Unitarian. The presentation I've prepared today illustrates the importance of being a father, not a dad. George Washington was the father of his country, not the daddy of his country. The prayer so many people repeat over and over again says, "Our Father who art in heaven," not our daddy who was in heaven. We're celebrating Father's Day, not Daddy's Day. I hope the story that I'm about to tell you will persuade you of the importance of the role of father, which is much more important than that of the role of daddy. Ed Malone was a dedicated head of family. He took total responsibility for our financial welfare, as well as making decisions that would keep the group running smoothly as possible. He was particularly interested in seeing to it that I was occupied in some remunerative activity at all times. Ed's position with Gulf Refining Company sometimes required him to do some hiring of personnel, and he had a theory that someone who had a history of working, all other things being equal, was a better prospect for employment with Gulf than someone who had spent summers lounging on a beach. When I was a sub-teen, I had a bunch of grass-cutting customers, gentlemen who lived in our suburb who were happy to pay me $1 to cut their grass, and who would even pay me in advance on times when they'd go out of town for a summer vacation. There were never any suggestion that I was responsible for sharing any of my earnings with the family or helping to finance my education. I got to spend my income as I saw fit. My father thought that was a swell reinforcement to teach me a strong work ethic. In fact, in addition to work ethic, I developed a working stiff psychology as a result of my interactions with the neighborhood fathers who were taking advantage of my willingness to work for chicken feed. One guy I remember acted very critical about my efforts and demonstrated his dissatisfaction by grabbing the lawnmower out of my hands and trimming around his bushes and flower beds, supposedly to show me what I should have been doing for my dollar. Even at that age, I could tell I was being had, and I quit stopping by his house after that. So I inadvertently learned that many adults feel free to exploit children by having them perform drudge tasks for substandard wages. It was an educational experience, even if I didn't exactly learn what my father intended me to learn. It was with that attitude a little bit later that I resisted cutting our grass for half price. Instead of some of the typical fatherly reactions I could think of, such as telling me that I'd have to pay rent for the lawnmower or that I'd have to pay for my own gas, Ed sat me down and he pointed out that my mother spent a great deal of her time cooking and doing the laundry and driving me to school and seeing to all of our needs. That he went on fishing trips to catch food for the family. That was a little bit of a light touch, avoiding complaining about any pressures he might be enduring at work. And that it would probably be an appropriate contribution that I could make to cut our grass for half price, plus the allowance I received simply for being a member of the family. Ed delivered this I message in a way that did not make me feel ashamed or humiliated. He was simply pointing out that there may be a facet to the situation I hadn't thought of, that he was kindly pointing that out to me. I immediately understood, agreed, and started cutting the grass for half price without further conflict. This kind of guidance, I judged, was one of his strong points as a father. Ed's hobby was fishing, and in my younger years, he'd sometimes take me along and coach me about this arcane skill. Think like a fish, he advised. When I did that, I started empathizing with the creatures who didn't appear to be enjoying being hooked in the mouth and dragged flopping and struggling out of the water and into somebody's ice chest. Ed was a meat fisherman, but I didn't particularly like the taste of fish or really enjoy fishing. He soon gave up taking me out on these adventures. The two of us just seemed to have different interests. It was a relief to me to be able to get back to my model airplanes. Some of the practical advice he gave me to try to soothe my way into adulthood may seem a bit unnatural to some of you. For instance, he told me that his grandfather had told his father not to fool around with loose women. Good advice, huh? His father told him not to fool around with loose women, but if he did, to wear protection. And he was now telling me that when I started fooling around with loose women, that I should wear protection. His advice about drinking and driving: never drive if you've had so much to drink that you're seeing double. That's a good practical advice, and it had a specific operation attached to it. Ed was a martini drinker. His first stop as he got home from work was usually the martini shaker, which furnished several doses of relaxation for him and my mother in the after hours. He developed peptic ulcers when he reached his middle years, at least partly, I'm sure, a result of the combined pressures he endured as a husband, a father, and a big company employee. At that time, his doctor told him that his drinking days were over. As far as I know, he never took another drink. The message I got was that working for a living could be very stressful. Later, I came to identify that kind of stress with big company employment. One of Ed's bosses was an LSU fan, and if the Tigers won a game, life was fairly tolerable in the following week. But if they lost, he became a fire-breathing tyrant, and everyone at the office suffered. It was many examples like that one that I observed about big company careerism that persuaded me from a very early age that I wanted no part of that kind of working situation. In fact, I made a rule for myself that I would never work for a company that was so big that I didn't have direct access to the company's CEO. I followed that rule with a fair degree of success throughout my working life and have never regretted doing so. Ed's example allowed me to learn another lesson, this one about work, that Ed may not have intended to teach me. One of the good things that Ed and Sarah did was to give me freedom to pursue my fascination with anything that flew through the air. I'd spend many of the fruits of my work on everything that went into building and flying model airplanes, and later taking flying lessons that led to my certification as a private pilot during my college years. I always had work area available in the houses where we lived, and my mother always put up with the messes and the smelly operations associated with model airplane building and flying. Nobody else in our family had the slightest interest in airplanes, but everybody acknowledged my love of aviation and facilitated my perusal of that interest. When time came for me to attend college, Ed took the financial load of paying all of my tuition plus other expenses to get a degree from Tulane, while I worked at one of those jobs that he encouraged me to have. I spent every nickel I made on stuff like flying lessons, and never thought of contributing to the cost of my higher education. It was simply understood that part of his role as a family head was to finance stuff like that, and mine was to do the work necessary to get a degree in 4 years. I ended up majoring in English. That was another decision that Ed didn't understand, and he questioned me carefully about the value of such a degree. I guess I must have persuaded him that my interest in literature was worth all that money he was contributing, and he allowed me to follow that interest until I was graduated. Somehow the things I learned in those years served me well, and I never had any trouble getting a satisfying job that paid enough for me to get by. I never participated in the struggle for career advancement that would have come from pursuing a career ladder with a big company. I didn't even want to join middle management, as I saw many of my faculty colleagues doing after I went to work as a high school teacher. I loved working with students in my own classroom and felt that the school was not paying me enough that I had to allow them to force me into undesirable working conditions. All in all, Ed's hands-off approach to my choices in lifestyle have led to what I consider a much richer, freer, and interesting life than he had. And I give him and Sarah a lot of credit for allowing me to direct my affairs as I saw fit. As this presentation draws to a close, I realize that I have not tried to address the issue of filial love. I'm not sure I know how to do that. Love of a son for his father is a peculiar thing. A good father is not exactly a friend, but Ed was a reliable and trustworthy caregiver, a man who could always be counted on to offer advice and support when it was needed. When my father died, my mother said that she had lost her only friend. Ed Malone was a mixed bag as fathers go. I guess all fathers are. He was a good provider and a trustworthy head of family. He worked hard to get Alice and me started on a path to successful lives, and I think he succeeded. He sacrificed a great deal of his own freedom to provide for us, and we accepted his leadership and generosity as it was offered. I think he evaluated his own life as a success. He got into the oil business at about the time it took off in the late 40s or the late 30s and became a major industry. And he retired about the time that the industry went into its decline, just before Gulf Refining Company went bankrupt. As usual, his timing was near perfect. Toward the end of his career, the company raised his pay so as to enhance his retirement income, which included regular raises for the rest of his life. So even though I'd say that he put up with a certain amount of abuse from the big company, they paid him well for it in money and in security. And did I mention that he got a good deal of satisfaction from working the geological puzzles that led to the discovery of a great deal of petroleum? He always said that he really enjoyed his work. I don't know the names or anything about the lives of my great-grandparents or any of the people in my family who lived before them. Like most of us, they lived their lives and died, leaving the world pretty much the same as it was before they came along. Most people change the world just a little bit, for better or for worse, by being parents. Marilyn says that, that having chosen good parents was the key to our success in life, and I think that she was right. So thanks to my father, Ed Malone, not to forget the parental contribution of Sarah, for making most of the right decisions, judgments, and contributions that enabled me to be the man you see before me. Someone who followed a different path from his father, but the grateful beneficiary of their hard work, devotion to their familial duties, as well as their ability to turn loose when it was time to do that, providing with the tools I needed to be a happy and successful citizen. Here's to Ed Malone and all the other pretty good fathers this Father's Day. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Lyrics of hymn number 1057 in our teal hymnal. Go lift it up. Love, bless your way. Moonlight, starlight, guide your journey into peace and the brightness of day. Very glad you joined us today during this time of worship and worth giving. Please stay connected because in 10 minutes, we'll have a virtual coffee hour led by our own Dion. I'm sure that many of you have much you'd like to share with each other. It's just a great time to catch up with what's going on within our community. So within 10 minutes.